I am here with Marcela from Self-Image Love, and she's going to talk us through a little about what self-image really is, and we should just take it from here. So, Marcela, tell me a little bit about Self-Image Love, your brand, how it came to be, and all of that.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. So, self-image emerged when initially I became a personal trainer.
Mm.
I started off working in a law firm, and then from there transferring to personal training. And then even though I realized that even though I had the education, I did not feel like I was a personal trainer. I was not embodying that because I
Hmm.
never been, it's like a person, I never been athletic. I was picked last at PE. So it just was very random just to become a trainer, personal trainer, be into that fitness world. But yet it was something that I love, but
Hmm.
yet growing up, I didn't have like that support system. So I was never good at sports or exercising anything. So then when I started to dab into the personal development world, I came across this book that changed my life, Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, MD. And he talks about like, sometimes it doesn't matter, you know, how much education or how much, of that, skill you have, but if you're not merging who you are being, you
Hmm.
know, it's always gonna stay with the old self-image. Like for me, the person that was never athletic, the person that, like was so bad at sports, that was that was staying with me even though I had all these certifications. So when I learned to merge those two, it was like my life just changed. But it's like something that you could just apply just overall in anything that we do, any changes or any type of transformation that we're trying to work towards. And then from there, of course, came hypnotherapy, where I needed a tool to know how to do it.
Mm, that's great. So you found that early on in your first transitioning from your first career.
Yeah,
And what a synchronicity because in that book, in the first couple pages, it was a guy trying to start out his fitness business, kind of like
yeah,
yourself, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
exactly. Hmm.
now you're in hypnotherapy and you got the tool to really ingrain that self-image into the subconscious.
Yeah, definitely. Because it is the same when we're on that weight loss journey. And I don't like to say weight loss. I rather say releasing a weight because that's what we're doing,
Mm.
like, because that word has like a very strong connotation of like we have the negative association with it, right? So
Yeah.
in my work with allowing and releasing weight, helping my clients, you know, I find that it's important to merge that self-image of the person that is healthy, that is strong, that exercises, every 3 to 4 times a week and merge it so they become it. And then
Hmm.
it's not such a like a strenuous journey of getting there, right? Because there's always a
Yes.
bouncing back.
Because that when you said that weight loss does carry that connotation with it, it does feel like a struggle with that word weight
Yeah.
loss. And I love the word on play or play on words that you did with uh releasing the weight instead
Yeah.
and the little
Hmm.
reframe you do. And I know you're a specialist in weight loss, and I love how you use the self-image concept and hypnosis with it. So
Yes.
anyone who's struggling with weight loss, go to Marcella.
Thank you.
Or releasing the weight, I mean.
Releasing the weight. There you go. Yes, well, no longer, is serving us. Sometimes we continue to carry it on for so long.
Yeah, okay, that's a
Mhm.
great little intro you gave us. So let's just get right into the core of it. So we hear the term self-image thrown around a lot, but what is it really, and what is your take on self-image?
Yeah, so um based on the words of Dr. Maltz, he defines it as that self-image controls what you can and you cannot accomplish,
Mm,
with how difficult or how easy it could be, and how others respond to you. So he talks about it like the thermostat that controls the temperature in your home. And every time that I read that paragraph, for me, it translate into the frequency that we are in, you know? So if I were to give you an example, if like we are on that frequency of the person that eats junk food all the time, that, never exercises or makes the time, feels tired, lethargic, we're holding that lower frequency. But once we start to really do some of that work, we're like hitting that lighter frequency to able to be merged, to where we want to be. We're hiring up that temperature, as we're doing little things like little work on ourselves, and really doing that imagery work, and to really connect with the mind, the part of us that is like we're accepting that higher frequency, we were being with it, so we could be
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Taking actions that match with that higher version of the skinny version of
Yeah, yeah,
yourself.
the healthier version, the one
Hmm.
that takes the steps, that because willpower, it's so hard when we don't take those steps. We're not aligning to the action steps,
Yeah.
and it's just, or also connecting or imagining ourselves, because it's imagining but also doing the actual steps, so we could like
Yes.
coordinate and be with one. Yeah.
And can you talk more a little bit about the conscious mind and using that willpower, that 12%, whereas you're using the 88% in a subconscious point of view through hypnosis into changing that self-image, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And that's another way to put it. Like, for example, like, let's say that, like you mentioned, the conscious mind is 12% of like the willpower, the logic, and the reasoning, saying like, okay, it's time to make some changes,
Hmm.
right? Because we all hit that point sometimes, like, wow, like, how did I allow myself to get here,
Hmm.
right? And while the conscious mind wants to change, the subconscious mind is the 88% of, our pretty much like what takes over. It's our body, it's so if the 88% is still stuck on the old self-image
Hmm.
of who we always have been,
Yeah.
then that it over empowers, right? Like the actions that we take. So that's why it's important to do that work on the subconscious mind and make it familiar, where eating healthy is familiar, exercising is familiar, and on and so forth.
Ah, that's a beautiful explanation. Thank you for that. And can you share a moment in your own life when shifting your self-image changed reality for you or switched things around once you made the decision to have a different self-image?
Yeah, and you hit on another great point, is the power of decision. It's
Mm.
about deciding as well. So also in my life, I struggle with severe social anxiety, so much so where it would like freeze me. I would be into that freeze response
Hmm.
where I couldn't speak my words. I would just my nervous system would just like freeze pretty much. And also going back to this book, I was carrying a lot of like my childhood of like, of always feeling nervous around people, that
Hmm.
severe social anxiety. I was just carrying that with me. And it wasn't until actually also I had a hypnotherapy session where I realized, like, wait, I'm a 30-year-old woman still carrying on, like the different versions of my younger self. and
Wow.
and that awareness really impacted me of like, wait, I'm not that person anymore. I'm this 30-year-old woman, that is seeking to feel accomplished, and on and so forth. So then that was like another merge of like creating this this new self-image of the person that actually take some time to regulate her nervous system, that grounds herself from time to time where she needs to. And when I feel like I'm going to go into a freeze response, like I have the tools where I'm able to utilize them, and then I create different patterns so that way I could just feel more safe in my body.
Or what in your story led you up to that decision?
Yeah, so I mean, it was like making the decision that early on I realized that when you are the quiet person, you know, I mean, I like being the quiet person, but when you come, because I'm more of an observer and things like that, and I feel happy that way
Hmm.
sometimes, right? But when we are going out in the world where we have to make a living,
Hmm.
you can't be that quiet person
Hmm.
because, you get stepped on,
Yeah.
and your boundaries are stepped on. So, you know, hitting into that realization that if I want to be something, if I want to accomplish something, I have to learn to regulate my nervous system
Hmm.
and create this new self-image of this empowering, confident person,
Yeah.
that feels that is heard, that is understood, that is assertive, and that's just the reality of things, when you're just like the quiet person, you just get pushed around, and maybe not intentionally, but it's just like you don't get seen for who you are.
Hmm.
That just gets bypassed. So I think that I got tired of that, of like just being seen as this person that is just quiet, that she's just there, like, and I wanted but that was how I kind of perceive myself too, right? So that goes along with like a
Your
lot of times how
self-image.
we perceive ourselves, that's how other people are going to perceive you, you
That
know?
makes sense. That's your energy that you're putting out, so people are gonna pick up on that.
Exactly. People
Hmm.
picked up on that like so fast. So then that was like where I needed to decide that I was gonna make the changes necessary and do the work necessary to go past those patterns. And then also I'm a
Hmm.
mom. So as a mom, like I'm also leading by example,
Hmm.
like I wanna them to be see me as this person that, does what is necessary to grow and not just stay stuck there, and not do nothing about it.
Yeah, you were placed in a role as a mom now, so you had to take that into consideration. And it seems like you had this goal, like your goals, and you had to
Hmm.
change your self-image of not being seen and being more assertive to reach
Hmm.
those goals. Like it was a
Yes.
necessary step to get those things that you wanted.
Exactly, exactly. And then especially when you are like when you're serving, like, like in the work that we do, we have to be that rock, we
Mm-hmm.
have to be that rock for our clients. And so that goes hand in hand with us always growing, us always doing the work as we are growing with our clients, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
another part that, you know, that I took into consideration. Like I can't just allow this severe social anxiety just to stop me and, you know.
Yeah, because you want to be there for your clients. That makes total
Mhm.
sense. When you realize that you are a 30-year-old woman now, but you're carrying the past identity and patterns, just realizing that you do have different versions of yourself and you're not just, one person or just like static. And there's
Yeah.
different parts of you, and you're like, oh, this is the old self, and this is me was like, okay, wow, just realizing that concept is like a huge breakthrough. It seems like for
Yes.
when you said it and it just like struck me, it kind of like paused me for a moment, like, wow, just like realizing this self-image concept is already like transformational.
Yeah, because you know what? I think the beauty about hypnotherapy is that it brings awareness, because a lot of the times, if we were to talk, sometimes we get so hyper suggestible
Hmm.
with our environment, like stress, whatever is going on in our life, we could just be into like walking zombies state,
Yes,
or just like
yes.
a walking zombie in a daydream with just going through the rhythm of life, but not having any awareness of what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that hypnotherapy slows everything down, slows down time, brings you back into your center of awareness to realize something as simple as like, wait, I'm 30, I'm an adult, I'm a woman. Like, I don't have to go back. And of course, it's natural that sometimes we'll regress, but then
Mm-hmm.
we have that awareness to come back.
Yes,
The
it's that
awareness is the key
awareness.
for everything, I feel like.
Yes, perfectly said. So many of us operate within invisible walls of these unspoken limits. We think it's just how it is, but what if it's just old programming? And Marcella, how do you help clients recognize the difference between what's probable based on the past and what's possible based on who they're becoming? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So a lot of times, we have these goals, right? Like, and I'm so used to, we get trained to do the SMART goals, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, going through each of those. And that is good, right? Because that we're working with our logical mind. And that's like the probable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like, if like let's say for example, going back to releasing weight, you have this goal, okay, we're gonna work out 3 times a week, we're gonna eat more greens. That's all probable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when it goes into the possibility of it actually happening, that's a whole other story,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then that is where the other part of the work is, like merging the subconscious mind to accept that that's going to be the new habits, the the new way of being, and
Yes.
that's what makes it the possibility of it happening.
That makes total sense when you said like using the conscious mind, the willpower, knowing working out 3 times a day and making it healthy choices. Like that's all conscious and
Right.
probable, but what's possible to make it more reality is to tackle it through the subconscious mind.
Right, exactly. Because I do believe we are our habits,
We
and
are
a lot of these
habits.
habits we catch them, automatically. It could be like as a part of like survival mechanisms. We just pick up on things like, and a big thing is like just if we're feeling stressed, we grab our phone,
Hmm.
scroll,
It's
or
automatic,
turn
kind of.
automatic. It's automatic, or like just watch TV.
Yeah.
It's automatic, but what if we could change that to, instead of doing those things, maybe you could do some breathing, maybe you could do some walking and bring more awareness into your body. And that leads you to making other choices like exercising,
Mm,
or maybe instead of a soda, grabbing something else, like more awareness, right? And that is what we want. And that is the work here,
hmm.
bringing you back to your center.
Wow. And I like how you said about how one decision, a healthy decision, could lead to another, and you could just get the ball rolling like that.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And can you talk a little bit more about recognizing the limits we set for ourselves and how can we learn to expand our personal potential and a little bit about allowing space to become more than the past definitions of ourselves?
Yeah. So a lot of times, I think we all have the best intentions for ourselves.
Hmm.
We all want the best for ourselves, right? Whether we think about it unconsciously or we have that awareness of it. But a lot of times we get frustration, like, and going back to, the releasing the weight, like, I see so many people that they intentionally do the best that they can to be healthier, get stronger, and even when I'm teaching fitness classes as well, I see people doing really hard work, doing the best that they can, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then the frustration kicks in, and that is when the we form limitations of ourselves. So,
Mm.
for example, someone that's been on this releasing away for, like, let's say 2 years, and they're doing the best that they can. They're doing little components here and there, but they're not fully committed.
Mm.
Then there's a frustration because then the evidence is they see the evidence of maybe they're not releasing weight. They've been the same this for the past 2 years, even though they're doing what they think they could do. So then frustration arises, which there becomes the evidence of,
Mm.
like, oh, this is not working for me. I'm still the same way no matter what I do. So listen to the word no matter what I do, right? So then they're forming that limitation on
Mm.
themselves because in their mind, they're doing everything that they can, you know, and maybe, without having the awareness that maybe there's other things that could move around, or maybe not having that awareness that maybe unconsciously maybe they be eating more than they think they are. But then there's that evidence, so then there's that imposed limitation on themselves
Mm-hmm.
of, like, nothing is working for me, right? And then
Yeah.
that continues to stay into the subconscious mind. It's not working for me. I'm never going to release this weight, and whatever negative words we could tell ourselves. But
Yeah.
then once we come to awareness, to presence, and really look in your actual day of what is actually happening, what you're actually doing, you're going back, you're like, oh, here I maybe not had the best meal, or maybe, I more than I needed to, or whatever it may be, right? You start to bring awareness, and at the same time, having some compassion for yourself and allowing some ease to happen, and then you allow for more space
Mm.
to make things different, to switch things around and make a little bit more changes, and that's how it is. It's always like coming back to that awareness, like slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what's happening here, and let's see what are some things that are in our control that we can shift. And
Yeah,
that's how
bring.
you open up more space
Mm.
to become this self-image of who you are being, right?
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. That makes total sense. Just bring it back to yourself. And it's definitely that awareness. And it sounds like the when frustration comes, that's kind of like a deciding point. Are you gonna stick to your old ways or overcome this? And the evidence part is kind of re-identifying with that past, like, oh, look, this I'm like this, instead of like, oh, but I went 7 days eating healthy and just one day bad. How come I'm like this old way instead of I did 7 decisions of this new healthy habit. It's kind of that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
perfectly explained.
perfect. Yes, love it.
And how do you personally stay consistent with a version you're stepping into? Can you give us some tips on, how not to go back and identify with that past version?
Yeah, so I think that it depends a lot of our environment and our relationships with the people that we have. I mean, sometimes we will go back,
Mm-hmm.
and because I feel like the work is never fully complete,
Mm-hmm.
but you have more awareness and you have more tools. So a lot of times, like an example would be that, you know, I, I've been teaching classes, fitness classes for like years, right? And then all of a sudden, I started teaching spinning, which is a different type of version that I was teaching. And all of a sudden, like, I feel like my old self-image merchant of, like, wanting to freeze, of,
Mm-hmm.
like, like brain fog, and like my hands shaking. And then I was like, oh, okay, you're emerging.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, just letting you know, like, talking to myself, that you are safe. You've done this already, but in a different way. You know, you are, you feel you could feel safe to teach as usual. It's just a different environment, and that's how you talk to yourself. And then you're like, oh yeah, I've done this before. Let me do it.
Yeah.
And that is how you continue to do the work. It goes back to the awareness. Or even like for example, when it comes to releasing weight, like a lot of the times, we could get into the zone of like, I don't want to exercise anymore. Like I'm
Mhm.
tired. Like I don't feel like it, right? And then it's like reminding yourself, like, wait a minute, like this does not match with who we are becoming, like
Mhm.
having that self-talk, and then you like, okay, start to make little decisions, like maybe let me just stretch, or maybe
Yeah.
let me just put on workout clothes and let's see where this takes us. As you're merging with that new self-image, it's gonna always be bouncing back and forward, but at the same time, you're moving more forward than back, right? Having that awareness.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the work that we do, with hypnotherapy, reinforcing, we always provide like audios for our clients to
Mhm.
continue that repetition, but the work is always when we are in our settings, in our environment where well, things will merge and you have to talk to yourself.
That's very true. It kind of goes back to mindset and talking to yourself into that uh positive mindset. And is that how you become resilient,
Hmm.
you would say?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like parenting yourself, right?
Hmm.
That's another way of coaching yourself,
Coaching
like
yourself.
coaching yourself. Because at the end of the day, we have to be our biggest supporters, our biggest mentors, like we are, right? We always have the support of others around us, but of our team per se. But then when we're alone in those moments, like we can't always have somebody whisper like, you got this. Maybe we will provide an audio, but we need to have that voice, in ourselves to be like, you've got this.
Yeah.
Like we've done this before.
And hypnosis kind of helps us be competent enough to self-regulate ourselves when there's no one around and all we have is us to talk to or like channel whoever is up there to.
Exactly.
So let's talk about success and not just career success, but joy, love, health, and creativity. And how does self-image influence those type of opportunities and relationships into our lives? How do we attract those
Yeah.
things? Success based on our self-image.
Yeah. So it goes back, I feel like when you're doing something meaningful in your life, when you're doing something that your heart absolutely desires, that brings a big level of joy,
Hmm.
you know, because I think that it's important to also focus on our heart desires, like in doing the things that brings us joy,
Hmm.
because, you know, that goes along with like what excites you. It's not just about like career success or financial success. It's also about doing those little things that excite you, and because that's aligned with who you are, right? And the more that you do those, the more that you are in alignment to show up in your other ventures, whether it's business, career, financials. You show up with a different energy,
Mm.
doing more of the things that bring that joy for you.
That's so true because once you create that joy, you just start attracting more things. Whereas if you're
Hmm.
in this negative vibration, if you're gonna go out to those environment may not stick as well as if you're vibing high.
Yeah, exactly. And because I feel that we have to continue to bring in like that nurturing energy back to us,
Hmm.
because sometimes it could be so taken away with like focusing on other things, but bringing some of that energy back, it just allows us to show up with more presence, because we're more of ourselves, right? Like that's
Yes.
part of it. Yeah.
And can you talk about a little bit about the connection of self-perception and personal growth and how self-compassion played a role in your own growth?
Yeah, that is such a good question. So, self-perception is so important because, like maybe let's say for example, someone could tell me like, "Wow, you're doing so good. Like, I'm so proud of you," and this and that. And that's so great, but what if I don't feel that for myself?
Hmm.
What if I don't feel, you know, that I'm doing great or, and so forth? What if my worth is still not there? So I think that that goes back to coaching yourself or being your mentor, where, and that's something you train yourself to do, to be that for yourself, that support system for yourself, where
Hmm.
you have this other perception of yourself of like the person that is competent, that is resilient, that maybe has her good and her bad days, but she always coaches herself through it, that feels empowered,
Yes.
and to once you have that self-perception of yourself, then that's where confidence comes in, you know the way that you feel about yourself, and that's something that you train yourself to do, just like a muscle, by
Yeah.
repetition, by showing up to yourself and giving yourself some compassion along the way, that things aren't always going to be perfect. Sometimes you're going to cry messy.
Hmm.
But then, the perception of yourself, like, well, I'm the person that keeps going. I'm the
Yes.
person that seeks support. I'm the person that I cry if I need to,
Hmm.
but yet I push past it and then I go into the next step.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, the self-compassion, because oftentimes when we do have a bad day or make a mistake, we'll beat ourselves up and be like, you, blah, blah, blah. And so it
Yeah.
is training and reprogramming, and coaching ourselves because what you said is important. It's more empowering and it's increasing your vibration
Hmm.
and versus when you're getting beat down, then you feel bad about yourself, then you shrink, and then you're not gonna do creative, productive work when you're beating
Hmm.
yourself down. So that makes a lot of
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah, because we could also be our worst critics, and judge
Yes.
ourselves, and I don't think that allows for us to be in that creative zone of
Mhm.
of allowing our true self to come out and
Yeah.
resolve things or whatnot.
Well, thank you so much for your insights. I think we learned a lot from your introduction on self-image. And is there any lasting words or any message or last minute educational tip you got for us?
Yeah, so I think that transformation, it's natural. It
Mm-hmm.
has a big connotation. It could be a scary thing, but it's natural. Like we are meant for evolution. We're meant for growth. We're meant we're meant to feel things. But, a lot of the times that discomfort that we might feel in our body when we're going through those shifts, it's temporary. Like sometimes we just let like that, that uncomfortable to just hold us back. Like it's too scary and this and that. But a lot of times it's our subconscious mind that is not used to these changes. So we have to be at ease and allow it to come without forcing it, but it's natural. It's a way of being.
Oh, thank you for that. I love how you said don't force it and it's
Yeah.
natural and just let it allow it to come and just be in that receiving energy. Oh.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Marcela. And if you want to see more Marcela, we will be co-hosting a self-image workshop on July 20th. Tickets will be in the link. It'll be on Eventbrite and see you guys there.
Yay.